Great. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Alina Singh, and I'm a board member at Emerge Guelph Sustainability. And I just want to give a big welcome to the Emerge's Women's EV Night. Before we begin our programming, I would like to just begin with a land acknowledgement. As we gather, we're reminded that Guelph is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. As a community, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work. Today, we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe people on whose traditional territory we're meeting. I just want to take a second to wish everybody a happy International Women's Day. And I'm really excited that you chose to spend your evening with us today. I will be moderating today's event, and I'm really looking forward to being part of the discussion. Just quickly, from a housekeeping perspective, I just want to point out that we will have an opportunity for a panel discussion later, and you can submit your questions, and we would prefer if you did that through the chat box below, as we're hoping to just keep only the panelists on microphone today. All right, so thank you again for joining us. This event is part of our work to help normalize the idea of EVs. In the world of EVs, ownership is dominated by men. This webinar today is for women, by women, and is meant to be an icebreaker for those of you that are curious about EVs and want to learn more. I'm curious and have my own questions that I'd like answered tonight too. We want this to be informal and fun, so get comfortable in your chair or your bed or your couch or wherever you are, and let's meet our first guest tonight. Our first speaker is Rasha Abusita, Sustainability Coordinator at Emerge. She is responsible for our home tune-up program and has also been the co-organizer of our programming that has brought together over 20,000 people to our EV events. Rasha will kick off tonight with the discussion on Emerge and climate change. Rasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alina. Happy Women's Day, everyone. And because we are fighting climate change, we wanna gift you a housewarming door prize, which is the hot water blanket. So we will be awarding the lucky winner at the end of this evening. Just a brief introduction about Emerge and what we do. We are a not-for-profit organization that fights climate change. One way we do this is by helping the transition towards 100% renewable energy in Guelph. And we help the city to commit to 100% renewable energy by 2050, a few years ago. And what we are trying to do is to help them again to set up their interim target and move the date much sooner. To reach 200% renewable energy target is not all about installing solar panels on your rooftops or installing wind turbines. It's not exactly like that. It's more about increasing your efficiency, which is the house productivity, and also reducing your waste, the energy waste. And in fact, 2/3 of the energy is wasted inside our homes. So if we tackle this piece first and we be much aggressive about it, then we can really achieve our target with 100% renewable energy. And this is usually the biggest challenge because this is adopting efficiency and conservation is usually overlooked in energy industry. And what I mean by that, if you want to adopt 100% renewable energy and approach to net zero standards home, then we need to mount solar panels on a lot of our rooftops. And if you think about it, this can be a little bit hard or not impossible, or impossible at some times, especially if we don't have space. And exactly like an average Guelph house needs at least from 3 to 4 rooftops to be mounted with solar panels, PV systems. And this can be a lot not feasible nowadays, especially with our current building codes. So what we need to do to tackle this piece is to help to improve the building envelope make our homes more tight and reduce our air leakage and improve the building insulation, then we can reach to 100% renewable energy. And to reach to this target, we also like to reach to another goal in Emerge that we are ambitious about, is to heat your home with the amount of energy that is equivalent to operating 3 TVs. Imagine how ambitious this can be. This is our target, so we are working toward this ambitious plan. Now, fighting climate change is not only about fighting or reducing your energy. In fact, it is energy and also water. So what we need to do nowadays is to save water, especially in our rivers, and also make sure that we can harvest more of the rainwater. That's why we are hosting this event, Rainwater Harvesting, on March 24. Stay tuned about this and check our website. We've got the registration is open for this event. We'll be lucky, we'll be really interested to see you all there. And while we are fighting climate change, we really like to address the transportation piece, which is the most easiest thing to do, and also could be the biggest chapter of the emissions. And in Guelph, we look at it that if you look at the sustainable transportation goals and try to prioritize more walking first, then goes to cycling and using e-bikes. And then after that, using electrified public transit system, then we can really achieve our goal. And after that, we give the lowest priority to our cars, and of course, convert to electrified cars. And in fact, if you transfer or convert from any gasoline car to any electric cars, you are going to save minimum of 4 tons of CO2. So this is a very big chunk of savings in our emissions to do. And by this, I end up my presentation. Thank you for listening to me, and I will give it to you, Alina. Over to you.
Thank you, Rasha. I get so excited hearing about the other events that are going on with Emerge. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our friend and special guest tonight, Kara Clareman, who is the CEO of Plug and Drive. Kara's accomplishments in promoting EV use throughout Ontario has been nothing short of spectacular. Plug and Drive has one of the most comprehensive collections of EVs anywhere in the country, and they have the expertise to go with it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kara.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Alina. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to share my screen now. And we'll get started. Okay, you let me know when it looks full screen.
Yep,
You good?
All good on my end.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks again. And I'm so happy to be here on International Women's Day to talk about EVs. And as a woman who drives an EV, I hope you'll feel comfortable to ask me all your questions. So I understand that you can put questions in the chat later on and we can get to them at the end. So I am going to just head right in. And I always like to start my presentations talking about climate change because the reason that we're talking about EVs as one of the important solutions to climate change is because transportation is actually the largest emitting sector in Ontario. And in most jurisdictions, it's either number 1 or number 2 in terms of emissions. So we really can't achieve our climate goals in our province or in our country if we don't tackle transportation. And that's why EVs have proposed such a important solution. As you heard previously, there's no silver bullets. We need to be talking about all different steps, including walkable and bikeable cities and transit. But if you drive, EVs are really an important part of the puzzle, piece of the puzzle. And that's why you are hearing so much about them in recent years. And of course, here in Ontario, we have a big advantage compared to a lot of other jurisdictions because we already have a relatively low emitting grid. And what I mean by that is our electricity system is based mostly on nuclear and hydroelectric power plants with a little bit of renewables and a little bit of natural gas, which means that most of the time, if you're going to be plugging in an electric car, you're going to plug it in at night when it's convenient at home. And that means typically natural gas is not running. Natural gas typically runs at peak times, which is usually in the middle of the day. And so if you plug your car in overnight, you're going to plug, nothing is zero emitting, but you're going to plug into almost zero emitting electricity. And so it's a really huge emission reduction, and probably the most significant thing you can do in your personal life next to giving up a car altogether or not flying on any planes. And so really important step to take. And just 2 minutes on Plug and Drive. As you heard already, we're a nonprofit. We're all about educating the public on the importance of electrified transportation. We do focus on personal transportation. This is us, a bunch of our board members and supporters at the EV Discovery Center when we launched it in 2017. If you haven't had a chance to visit us at the EV Discovery Center in Toronto, I hope you will. You're not that far away in Guelph. It's a really super fun place, an interactive sort of learning center with all kinds of makes and models of EV to test drive with no pressure to buy anything. And so right now we're still operating, although things are opening up, we're still operating on an appointment only basis. So you have to make an online appointment to come visit us. But then you get the whole place to yourself. So really still COVID safe, and you should really come. It's a fun place to visit. It's just a nice view of it, and you get an idea of, the test drives, and the center is more of an interactive learning center. Inside, in addition to having sort of displays and learning, we also have an event venue with workshop space or space to hold a board meeting. We haven't held one in quite a while, but I'm really hoping we're going to have some this spring and summer. So if you work for an organization that you think might like it, it's a fun place to host an event compared to a boring old hotel ballroom. You can do test drives on the breaks. In addition, of course, we focus on education, including webinars like I'm doing right now and the public test drives, but we also work on policy with the government, and we do research, and we partner with companies to help them with their workplace charging or their fleets. But as I say, most of our work relates to outreach and education. And of course, we are also, like Emerge, a nonprofit. And so I would be remiss if I just didn't take 1 minute to say thank you to all the folks that sponsor us. We couldn't do our work without their help. And especially during COVID, when we couldn't be open for parts of the year, we really, really appreciate their support. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the benefits of electric cars. And I want you to feel comfortable to ask me all your questions, whatever questions you think, even if you think they're, there's no dumb questions in this particular environment. You're going to reduce your emissions by at least 90%, maybe more, depending on what time you plug in. Another thing that we have heard about from a lot of our, contacts with the public is, there isn't one that I like, or I'm waiting for the SUV or the truck. It's all about the makes and models. And luckily, we're in a situation now in Canada where up to 50 plus, more than 50 makes and models are available in Canada. So this issue of there isn't one that I like, or I'm waiting for Toyota or Mazda or some other brand, they're all coming out. And within a year from now, we're going to be up over 100 makes and models. So I really believe that the issue of like, I'm waiting for a certain brand, or I need a certain style of car will be over, and we won't be talking about that anymore. The other topic that we hear about that is diminishing, but is still there, is this issue of range. And of course, in the early days, those of us who had sort of first generation EVs around 2010, 2011, they were low range vehicles. 100, 120 kilometers was typical. Now the cars coming out have 300, 400, even 500 kilometers of range. So we're getting away from the issue of, it's not enough range for my lifestyle. And by the way, when you look at the statistics of Canadian drivers, quite surprisingly, about 80% of Canadians drive 50 kilometers or less a day. So for most of us, this kind of range is more than enough. It's just different than what we're used to on a full tank of gas. And we imagine we're going to be out there and needing a charge, and where are we going to get it? The reality is most of us are just commuting back and forth to the same places, and they're not far. And so we have to think, what am I actually doing on a day-to-day basis? Not what did my old car provide? And so what we're finding is, although range is still a concern, it's not as much of a concern. And once people actually have the car, it literally goes away after a week or two of driving, that they feel comfortable that actually, oh, I'm going to like just go there and come back, and I'm going to plug in at home, and it's going to be 100% fine. And finally, the thing that I think is most important for people to know about is about the money savings. I think most people understand EVs are better for the environment, but they don't necessarily understand that they're much, much cheaper to operate. So electric cars, of course, run on electricity instead of gas. I don't have to tell you that gas prices have gone absolutely crazy. I haven't bought gas in years, so I have to check it when I'm giving a talk like that. But I see that gas prices are out of this world. You're going to easily save $2,000 a year. If you're paying like $1.60 more even for a liter of gas, I'm paying the equivalent of about 27 cents. And so you just really are going to charge up overnight for about $2. It's just unbelievably inexpensive. So even if you're paying a little bit more for the vehicle up front, you are going to save that over time. And within a couple of years, you're going to be in the money. So it's a matter of looking at, pay now to save later. Think about the total cost of ownership, not just the sticker price of the car. The sticker price does not even tell half the story. And if you don't, want to take it from me, we have a really great tool on our website where you can calculate your own personal total cost of ownership. This is like a micro site to the Plug and Drive site. So you can either just go to Plug and Drive and you can find it, or you can go directly to it at ev.pluganddrive.ca. And basically this tool allows you to enter in your current gas car and how much you drive, and then you can compare that to any EV on the market. You can then it'll give you a month-to-month breakdown of how much you're going to save every month based on your own pattern of driving. And so you really can see when you'll hit that break-even point, even if the car costs you a little bit more upfront. So go in there and play around with it. It's a really fun tool to use and easy to use. I'm not a super techie, and I found it really easy to use. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a few pointers based on all the different people we've spoken to over the years. We've been at this EV education for almost 12 years. And so in those early days, you can imagine I got a lot of, blank expressions when we talked about EVs. Now people understand a little bit more about it. And we've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of consumers. And this is what we've heard. We've basically heard, there's two primary types of EVs. There's the plug-in hybrid and the fully electric. So when I say plug-in hybrid, I mean a car that has both electric battery, it's got a certain amount of battery range, and also it has gas on board. That's a plug-in hybrid. Then a fully electric, I'm talking about a car with no gas, just a big battery. What we are finding is that there's a certain type of family or person that tends to choose fully electric. They tend to be people who have a predictable commute that are driving like less than 100 kilometers a day on average. They often are two-car families, so they feel comfortable that one of their cars could be fully electric. They typically will have access to a plug at home, so they feel comfortable that they can plug in at home. And of course, they want to maximize their savings. Of course, you're going to maximize your savings if you go fully electric, compared to if you're driving a plug-in hybrid. You're still having to pay for gas. You still have the two different systems running, so you still have more maintenance costs. You will save, but you won't save as much. And then on the flip side, the type of people that tend to choose a plug-in hybrid tend to have either a long or very erratic commute. Like when I say erratic, I mean like you go to different work sites every day, or you maybe are in sales and you're driving to different locations. Those type of people with an unpredictable commute tend to be more concerned about their range, so they might opt for a plug-in hybrid. Also, we do hear from a lot of folks that they choose a plug-in hybrid when they're a one-car family. So they're thinking, well, this car has to do everything for me. This car is going to do my city driving, and I'm also going to use it to make road trips and other things. And so we do hear from people that they are more comfortable with a plug-in hybrid if it's their only car. And then finally, a lot of folks, of course, don't live in single family homes. They live in multi-unit residential, or they live on a street with no parking. And in that case, we do find a lot of those people think, well, if I'm not going to be able to charge every single day, I might just want to have a plug-in hybrid. So some nights I might not plug in. And so that tends to be, now, of course, there's exceptions to all these rules. I'm an exception. We're a only EV family. We don't have a gas car in the family, and I have no concerns about that. If once a year I need to take a really big trip, which hasn't happened, of course, in a few years, but if I would rent a vehicle or swap with a friend. I have so many friends with minivans that it's like I lend them my EV for the weekend, they lend me the minivan, and we're all good. So I would not make a choice of a car based on a 1 or 2 trips a year situation. We hear this from a lot of consumers. Well, what if I want to go to Algonquin Park, or what if I want to go to Montreal? It's once a year or twice a year. Don't base your choice of vehicle on a 1 a year trip. Base it on the 99%, and that once a year you could rent, you could swap, you could take a train, you can do something else. And you will save so much money that it will be worth it to do that. So just try not to think about your car as has to do every single trip you've ever done in your life. I get a lot of people saying to me, what am I going to do if I want to drive across Canada? And I'm like, are you going to drive across Canada? Because I can tell you 100%, I'm never doing that. And now it might be something you do once in your life, but these are not realistic scenarios. You think about what you actually do, not what you might on a dream kind of do, and to maximize your savings. And honestly, you could rent a car 20, 30 times and it would still be worth it in a year. So that's my advice on making your choice. Now, I do find that the whole levels of charging is an area that is confusing to people who are new to EVs. And I just think it's worth it just to go through it to make it clear to everyone, especially when you're new to it. It seems daunting, but honestly, it's super easy. You hear people say level 1, level 2, level 3 charging. What is that? Level 1 is a regular outlet. Your outlet that you plug your phone into, a 110 plug. And by the way, every EV on the market can charge on this kind of plug. So if you have a plug like this outside your house, you're actually ready for an EV. You don't actually need anything more than that. And the only downside of it is it's slow. And so you get about 8 kilometers for every hour that you charge. Now, for a lot of us who are driving only 30, 40 kilometers a day, this is no problem. You're going to fully charge your car easily overnight if you only are driving like 50 kilometers a day or less. And so don't think, oh, I need to like get this charger and I need to do all these things. You don't necessarily need to. When I first bought my first EV, I got a Nissan Leaf and I used this 110 plug for the first couple of months just to see, like, maybe this is fine for me. Maybe it'll be fine. I decided in the end to get a level 2 charger because it was our only car and I had young kids. And I thought, well, what if there's an emergency at night? I want my car to charge a bit faster, but it might be fine for you. So just to let you know that this is an option. Level 2 is basically the equivalent of a dryer or stove plug. It's nothing fancier than that. It's basically a wand that attaches to a dryer plug. And so all that means is it's a 220, 240 plug that's more than twice as fast. And so you can get about 30 kilometers for an hour instead. So basically, even if you fully depleted the biggest EV battery that there is, like a Tesla that has 600 kilometers range, you could charge this overnight, no problem. So this is all anybody needs max at home. And you see the picture on the right is sort of a home charger. The one on the left is a commercial type of level 2. They're the same. They give you the same amount of power. It's just one might have like a payment system and is more robust for like, you know, a commercial kind of purpose, but they do the same thing. And so this is what you hear when you hear level 2, that's what they're talking about, a dryer plug. And then finally, when you hear level 3, that's a quick charger. That's the kind of charger you would find at a highway rest stop or sometimes at a mall, but you would never have this at home. It's very high powered. You don't have enough capacity on your panel at home to accommodate this. And this is the kind of thing that's going to give you about, you know, 250, 300 kilometers within, it's actually faster than this, within about 45 minutes. And so it's the kind of thing you would do on a road trip. You're going to stop for lunch. You're going to plug into one of these for half an hour, 40 minutes. You're going to go get lunch. You're going to go to the bathroom. By the time you get back, you're ready to continue on your way. And so these are the ones that you see, you know, that are going into en route, that are out and about in the community, but they are not at home. So hopefully that puts you in the picture of what the different levels of charging are all about. And then if you're thinking, okay, I'm ready to think about an EV, I'm convinced EV is going to be my next car, which we hear, you know, from a lot of Canadians. Where am I going to find it? And these are the sites that we find most often are told to us are going to be the places that they found the cars that they bought. And you can find new and used on these sites, more so used. I mean, you know, to go for new, you got to go to the dealer. But if you want to look at private options and other options, Auto Trader and Kijiji. And by the way, more and more, we're seeing them even on Facebook Marketplace as well. And then finally, let's say you have a very specific EV in mind, like you really want a 2017 Bolt that's the gray inside and the burnt orange outside or whatever. You might have that in your mind, then you can't find it. You can email us at this custom address, mycustomev@pluganddrive.ca, and we will connect you with somebody who knows how to find it. They have connections in the States and all other provinces and all over the place. And it gives you an opportunity to find EVs that you can't find. But by the way, there are lots of different cars available on the, you know, on the usual websites, but just if you really have something particular in mind. And I just, you decide you want to get a level 2 charger, as I mentioned, you don't necessarily need it. You might want to try without it for a bit. But if you decide you want it, we do have an online store at our website. It's also a microsite, chargemycar.ca, or you can just go to it through Plug and Drive's website. And we don't make any money doing this, so it's all nonprofit, but we did it because we found people were having a really hard time finding home chargers. Because, you know, Home Depot has one and Amazon has one, but like nobody can help you and you don't know if this is the one you should get. And so we just put all the different brands on one website and you can compare their features, and you can also call our office and ask us all your questions like, oh, I don't have a garage, it's going to be outside, I need a long cord, I'm buying a plug-in hybrid, I'm buying a fully electric, which one makes sense for me? And we'll help you. So just putting that out there, it's an opportunity. If you need help, we're there to help. And then we hear a lot of confusion around public charging. There's more and more public charging networks out there, which is good, right? It's more and more availability of public charging in all different locations. The challenge is these are all a little bit different. And some of them take a credit card swipe and some of them don't. Some of them you need a special membership card. Some of them you can do with your phone with an RFID, with a QR code, or with it's like a Starbucks type of system where you put some money in and then you swipe it. They're all a little bit different. Don't let that deter you. I find most of us are creatures of habit. You know, you tend to go to the same places. And by the way, like 90% of the time, you're just going to charge at home. But the odd time when you're out and you need to do it, you know, you tend to just revisit the same places and then you just understand how those ones work. But this just is to give you confidence that there really is an explosion of charging out there. It's getting easier and easier to travel with your EV. And you won't be, unless you're really going remote, you're going to find charging, and there's apps for that to help you find the chargers that you need. I wouldn't want to do this talk without talking for 2 minutes about used. You might have heard that Plug and Drive is offering an incentive on used. It's not being offered by a government of ours. It's being offered by a nonprofit. And we are so lucky to have met up with the Brigham Foundation, who is basically a person who has a family foundation. He really believes in the importance of EVs in terms of fighting climate change, and he's putting his own money down for rebates. We do still have some money for rebates. We are going to run out of money before too long. So if you are thinking about a used EV, this rebate program is still active. Probably the money will last another couple of months, but it's hard to say because it's first come, first serve. Anyway, if you're interested, go to used EV on our website, and all the instructions are there. Everything you need to know about how to get the rebate. There's just a couple of rules, but it's pretty easy. And it's $1,000 for a used EV, and then a second $1,000 if you also scrap an old gas car and buy a used EV. So great way to get $2,000 off the price of your used EV. So I hope that you will take advantage of that. Okay, I'm getting to the end here. I just wanted to do a little bit of a broader view. We've been talking Ontario and the nuts and bolts of how to get into an EV. I want to sort of talk about how Canada's doing in the scheme of the world, and what we need to do. And what I would say, if you ask me, like, how's Canada compared to like other countries in the world, I would say, meh, we're doing okay, not great. Like, we could do a lot better. And this is just a little snapshot of how some other countries are doing. China is up to 20%. Lots of countries in Europe are above 20%, as you can see here. Canada is down around just below 5% total. And to be honest, that's only because BC and Quebec are up around 10%. And the rest are down below 5%, well below, including Ontario. So when people say, oh, you know, the EV revolution is here, it's happening, whatever. Well, not really. It's sort of, you're hearing a lot about it, but people aren't doing it. There's still only 2% of Ontario drivers are doing it. So we really, if climate change is a crisis, which I believe it is, we cannot wait. You have to do it when your car is ready to switch. This is the time. And by the way, you're going to save money, so you're not sacrificing anything. And just to hold up the sort of leading light on EVs is Norway. Norway's a cold weather country. It's got a dispersed small population, kind of like Canada. It's a smaller country, but they are up to like in the 90% in terms of EV adoption. Unbelievable. And they did it by, you know, very aggressive policies, including big taxes on gas car and incentives on EVs, and then also a bunch of non-monetary incentives like free parking in Oslo and access to HOV lanes and all sorts of initiatives. But it shows it can be done, right? If Canada were to choose the right policy course, we could actually really do a lot better. We have the low emitting electricity to do it. So there's no reason why not. We just have to encourage people more. And I just, I mentioned this at the earlier, but I just think it's really important. We talk a lot about the environmental benefit. We talk about the economic benefit, that we're going to save money, we're going to reduce emissions. But the final thing that we often forget is that actually there's a huge benefit to public health, because our cars actually make us sick. And we don't realize it, but the studies show that if you were to switch over the whole light duty vehicle fleet to EVs, we would save lives, we would save a lot of costs in healthcare, and drop emissions at the same time. So if you're interested in more information, a huge study was done in the Greater Toronto area just last year. It's at clearingtheair.ca, but it shows that there's massive benefits that we haven't even included in our calculations of the benefits of EVs, and I think we shouldn't forget that. So that's the end of my talk. I see there's a bunch of questions in the chat, or at least posts in the chat. This is my information. If you want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to hear from you, or reach out to Plug and Drive if you want help figuring out your charger or your car or anything like that. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Kara. That was so interesting. You touched on so many topics that I'm sure we all have on our minds, and you can definitely tell by the flood of questions that came in, you have really sparked a lot of interest. And I'm really excited to get to that later on in today's session. So I just want to take a second to before we get to our questions, I'd like to bring two Guelph women into our comfy chair chat. Both have joined us to share the expertise they've gained owning and driving their EVs here in Guelph for several years. So if everyone could join me in welcoming Mary Cameron, who drives a used Chevy Bolt. Mary has been helping us through the pandemic as an ER doctor and vaccinator at the ICU at the Guelph General Hospital. And at the same time, she's raising 4 kids and says, I used to be the one to teach them everything, but more and more the roles have reversed and my kids teach me so much. I hope my parents say the same thing. When it comes to the environment, she's been eating more of a plant-based diet with dairy and meats only as an occasional treat, and has planted about 100 trees provided by Trees for Guelph in her yard over the past several years. She is also in the midst of renovating her house to be heated with an electric air heat source pump, And her husband also decided to buy a used EV after seeing the benefits of Mary's car. Her household includes a cat, a dog, 5 backyard chickens, and tens and thousands of honeybees, but they stay outside. Welcome, Mary. It's so nice to have you today.
Thanks so much. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I bought my used Chevy Bolt in 2019, a little while after attending a session just like this. I was driving a gas minivan that was on its last legs, and I knew it was time for a new car. And I guess my first step was attending this sort of a session and just understanding how EVs work, because I didn't really get anything about, how it all worked with the plugs and how far you could drive and how much it cost and that sort of stuff. So after I learned what you're all learning tonight, I decided that I wanted to step into the world of having an EV, mainly because as a family, we're trying more and more to be environmentally conscious, and my kids are really pushing for us to do anything we could to be, greener people. I knew I wanted to buy a used car, so I spent a little while on the resources that were mentioned earlier. So it was Auto Trader and Kijiji. I looked at consumer reports to try and decide what sort of car I would want to drive, and I ended up settling on a Chevy Bolt. So I found a little red Chevy Bolt that was 2 years old when I got it, so I picked that up in October of 2019, and I've been driving it ever since and loving it. So I might just talk about some of the stuff that I've learned and some of my experiences. So I heard this talk, and I guess one of the main concerns a lot of us have is, what about range, and how am I ever going to be stuck where I can't get the place I want to go? Most of what I do is I live close to where I work. I work in Guelph. I live in Guelph. My commute is like 6 minutes from door to door. So I don't worry about range day to day. It's the family car that gets kids to their lessons, that goes to the grocery store and back. So in and around town, there's really no concerns. My plan had been that if there was a trip that was going to be very long or very remote, I would just rent a vehicle for family trips. We haven't had to do that. We have done all of our trips with either my EV or my husband's EV, and we've really had no troubles. So we camp in Algonquin, and we have no troubles making it up to Huntsville. And what we tend to do is we drive up the night before of our camping trip, and we drive all the way to Huntsville, and then we'll charge while we're up there, and then so it's fully charged while we kind of go up to Algonquin. Our car sits fully charged in the parking lot while we do our trip for a week or so, come back to our fully charged car, and then back to Huntsville to have a night's sleep, and then drive home. So that's kind of the way we do it. We've also driven from Guelph all the way to Montreal, making stops along the way, and it's just kind of like what the way it was described in the education section, that in the time it takes for everyone to go into the rest stop, get something to eat, everyone has a pee, you're charging during that time, and by the time you come back, you're good to go again. What I've noticed with when you plug into these level 3 rapid chargers is when your battery is low, it really quickly charges up to like 80%, and then the last little bit takes longer. So often we don't kind of charge to 100%, but it gets you like rapidly up to to be a 75 to 80% charge, so you can kind of drive for quite a bit longer before you have to think about charging again. So that's been good for us. In terms of costs, I didn't really know what I was paying for electricity versus what I used to pay for gas, but because of this talk today, I went through my old electricity bills just out of curiosity to see like, what am I paying? So I looked at my electricity bills month to month before I bought my car. And after I bought my car, my electricity bills went up by $20 a month. So me as a person who is a around town commuter, I don't do long commutes, it's mostly just a family car. It was $20 a month more that we're paying as a family for electricity. A year after I bought my car, my husband bought his EV, and he is a little bit more of a longer commute kind of a guy, because we live in Guelph, but he works in Cambridge. So his commute is to Cambridge and back every day. And after he bought his car, we went up another 40, so a total of 60. So for somebody who's driving, longer commutes daily, it was a $40 a month increase. But as a family, 2 EVs, it's now $60 more a month than we paid before we had our EVs, which is about like half a tank of gas for most of you who are driving cars nowadays. So I think we're ahead for sure. In terms of maintenance, I've had to buy new wipers. I have to change my tires over with the seasons, and I had to swap out brakes, which I think is a kind of a normal thing to happen around 60,000 kilometers. So I've done that, but there's really been no maintenance, with the exception of, you may have heard, I'm not sure people, there was a question in the chat about batteries catching on fire. And Chevy Bolts have had a recall on the batteries because there have been a small number of fires associated with the battery. So millions and millions of Bolts have had their batteries recalled. So that has happened for me. I've had my battery changed out. That was at zero cost. So that issue's been addressed, which for me was kind of bad environmentally, that my battery got, I don't know where it's going to be, recycled or repurposed. But when you have an EV that you get a new battery in, it's kind of like having a brand new EV. So it was sort of a bonus for me that I bought this used car, that I got this brand new battery in. So that's kind of cool. I do kind of what the presentation suggested people generally do: drive around in the day, and then every few nights I'll plug it in at nighttime, and it charges overnight. You can also program your car so that even if you plug it in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it won't charge until the electricity is cheap. So you can kind of always charge at cheap electricity times. That's an automatic sort of thing. My favorite thing is to drive past gas stations in the rain or in the really, really cold winter days. And more with the gas prices, what they are, like any gas station is sort of a treat to drive past nowadays. So I think that's sort of my experience. I'm happy to answer any of the questions you guys might have later, but I guess I'll hand it over to the next ambassador.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting to hear in your own experiences of owning, a used EV. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to have our next guest, Beverly Fratz, join us. So welcome, Beverly. Beverly drives a used Nissan Leaf and has spent her career working in education and training, and is now at the University of Guelph as a manager of program development for open ed continuing education. The Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal provided her with the perfect opportunity to trade in her Volkswagen diesel for a used 2014 EV Leaf. She says the humble Leaf does the trick for local out and abouts and can even fit her family of 5 and the dog in her car. While hoping the future will include another used EV with more range, Beverly can't imagine ever driving a gas vehicle again. She recommends EV driving for anyone who wants to reduce their environmental impact, save money, access the best parking spots, EV charging stations, and drive a vehicle that heats instantly, which is 100% a Canadian winter bonus. Welcome, Beverly.
Hi, thank you. I'm learning a lot listening to others. One of the things that I remember finding the most helpful, but it was after buying the car, was I happened to be at a conference at up north, and Plug and Drive was there also at the conference at Blue Mountain. And the folks that were there gave me a little booklet, and I wonder, Cara, if you still have it. It is brilliant.
We still make those booklets.
Oh my goodness, everyone that is remotely interested in buying either fully electric or hybrid, it does this brilliant comparison of every car on every model of car, and then compares it so you can figure out which is the best based on range and price. And then does the same. So it does that for the EV, does that for the hybrid, and etc. And I have spent so much time since I already had my car at that point, but looking at that booklet and now needing to start shopping again in the near future for another EV, I was thinking I have to find an updated version. So hopefully you folks have an updated version, because I think the one I saw is like 2018, 2019. So what is that called if people are looking for it? Where would they find it?
We don't have it online. We only have it in person.
Okay, that was great. And at the same time, it was the people that were up at Blue Mountain doing a show for you also were giving out the $1,000 reimbursements if you bought used, and I'm shocked to hear that still is available, so that's really neat. So like with all things I shop for, I did not plan very well because I hate shopping, so I usually just want to buy something quickly and sort of have it off the list. I had a diesel vehicle that was already breaking down, and then I needed to turn it in with the to get the recovery from the Volkswagen diesel piece. So that was fabulous, because I had a car that was probably at that point worth about $500, and I got $1,800 for the trade-in on the Volkswagen. So I had driven diesel essentially all my life, and had been we had been as a family looking at veggie oil in our diesel as an alternative, but decided we'd go this route, and so looked in Kijiji and Auto Trader, and there was a lot for sale. And in thinking about this today, I looked again, and there's a ton of used stuff for sale. So someone asked in the question, it really is the critical question for me, what do you look for in a used vehicle? Well, the things I looked for, and I have to admit, this wasn't just an I, it was a we, it was low mileage. So we got our car 2018, it was a 2014. So I don't know if they call it a second generation car, but it has a range of about 140, which is very, very little. But you need to know what your lifestyle is, like be mindful of that. So for me, I knew it was going to be a vehicle for more local and that for trips and such, we have like a big industrial truck. So not great if you're going to Toronto, you can't get it in the underground parking if you're going to a concert. So in those cases, I do as Cara said, and I trade vehicles with a friend for the night to go to Toronto. So if you know you're going to, if you're only a one car vehicle and you're looking for used, you need to make sure, well, you just need to know your lifestyle to know how much range you need. So look at the range you believe you need. And I think it's really what Cara said, it's what do you need as the usual. I too have rented a car when I took my daughter's dog sledding up in Huntsville. It's like rent a car for 2 days, big deal. Or trade a vehicle with somebody. That's not insurmountable. So that's great to know as an option. So, but the other thing is with used that hasn't been mentioned yet is you want to see what kind of condition or how much battery the battery has left. I'm not sure I'm using the correct language, but I know now, and this just happened in the last couple months, we don't have full battery capacity in our battery anymore. So when I look, I can see that it's one level down from being its full capability in the battery. So if you're looking used, you want to look to see, and Cara can speak to probably, you know, what is this language that you need to say, or what do you want me to pause and maybe you can just interject right now what people would need to ask for or look for in terms of that battery functionality in a used car?
Sure. We usually, when we do the used EV webinar, when people are thinking about buying used and they're going to try to get the rebate, there is a test you can do called the state of health test, which most EV dealers know how to do, which will tell you kind of how far depleted your battery is when you're buying it. And that way you kind of have a good sense. And it really shouldn't be down. You know, the fact that yours is down 1 bar, that's not bad considering it's a 2014. We have found in general, they could drop like 1% or 1.5% for each year that, that they exist. So, you know, by the time it's 5 years old, it might be down 5 to 7%. It's not significant, but it depends on, again, you mentioned your lifestyle and how much range you need. So it's something worth doing if you're buying a used vehicle and you just want to be sure.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. I will tell everyone that we've only ever had a regular plug at the house. You know, that is just absolutely no big deal. You get home, you plug in. I mean, I plug in anytime that the car is plugged, that the car is parked, we just plug in and charge because you never know what's going to happen. So that's never been a big deal. The backup I do, because I don't have a lot of range. I have 140 absolute best conditions. I can't get to downtown Toronto with that. So I know my favorite places on the way to Toronto. And you know, one of the things with buying EV, if you're buying used that has lower battery range, you just have to plan a little bit. You can't be completely spontaneous. So like Cara said, we're creatures of habit. I know the 1 or 2 spots between Guelph and Toronto, just off the 401, and they're free. So there's the Greater Toronto Authority, just off the 401, free, lots of light, like 8 stations. It's brilliant. But the last time I went to Toronto, it wasn't working. It's all shut down. They're redoing it. So then I freaked out a little bit. You get out the app that you quickly learn about, that you have to look to find, you know, that you want the fastest speed. So whatever that's called. So you're looking to see what's available. And then inevitably I went to a number of places and they weren't working. So, you know, so you have to know your plan A, B, and C on case. Luckily, by about the 3rd, 4th place I went to on the little map, and they were all very close, like within like a half a minute drive of each other, because there is no shortage of stations. They're everywhere. But, you know, I lucked out and find them on Britannia, Mississauga, the Mitsubishi place, another free place. It's amazing. It's my new go-to. So, so there are free places to charge all over. I would say that I use for my little pass that I have to make it easier. The chart, what is it? Cara Charge Point, and Charge Point. Amazing customer service. There's been times I haven't been able to charge and etc. And they just like charged it for me and given it to me for free. Or they're amazing. They also have a relationship with Flow, because then it was like, oh, there's not a charge point nearby. What am I going to do? We'll go to a Flow and you can use your charge point. So you learn pretty quickly those little overlaps, because that was the only sort of complicated thing for me. But once I had my little tag with charge point, and their customer service is just brilliant, and knew I could use that with Flow. And those are the most often the charging places that I would see. But you need to know how to use your app to find your charge places, and how to be able to recognize the different symbols within that to know if it's a slow charge or medium charge or a fast charge. And then there's times like the time I was going to Blue Mountain to the conference where I saw Plug and Drive. You know, you need to plan your route a little different. Maybe you're going off here to go here because you're stopping in, you know, Mount Forest to charge. And then it's exactly what Mary said. You're, you know, using a washroom and grabbing something at the grocery store and you're on your way. But, you know, it can't be quite as spontaneous. You need to be able to plan and have a backup plan. One of my backup plans is if I'm going, you know, any kind of distance, I just grab my normal plug that I plug into the normal plug outside the house, and I stick it in the trunk. Because I think worst case scenario, I can find a plug on the outside of a building. And even if I plug, if I only get 20 kilometers, you know, after an hour, you know, I can get somewhere. So that's an easy backup to do, right? If you're really stuck. I would say, had I thought this through a little bit more before, you know, doing this, I would have paid more. I really didn't want to pay anything. I wanted to get my money from Volkswagen, 18,000, buy a car for 18,000, and that's what I did. Zero exchange. And literally, other than maybe what Mary said, maybe a windshield, I have paid zero, other than like switching snow tires. So I would say for anyone who doesn't really know how to like look after a car and really doesn't want to think about it, go EV. Do not go hybrid. Hybrid, you got to look after a motor and the other stuff. Like, I just don't get it. Just get.
I know, so cheap.
Get the range.
Sometimes I think, I can't believe everyone's not doing it. So cheap.
I cannot believe everyone's not doing it, having driven it. It's like, is this the best kept secret? Like, this is no secret. I don't want to change oil. I don't want to, like, I've been driven vehicles that the engine is seized in Indiana and you're stuck for 4 days. Like, I don't want to look after a motor. I don't know enough about it, and I don't want to think about it, and I don't enjoy it. EV, you don't think about anything. There's nothing to think about. So if you don't want to worry about that, you open your hood. There's a battery, a place to put some windshield wiper, some fluid for your windshield wiper fluid, some battery fluid, and I don't know, like, that's it, really. So if you don't, so someone said about towing, I mean, it's like any vehicle, you have to see what it can tow. I would say though, next time I buy, I want more range. That's definitely, but you pay for what you get, right? I paid little and, you know, and got little, and it's fine. But, you know, I'd like to have more range, because now I see people, you know, the charging at that airport authority, Greater Toronto Airport Authority, who everyone knows is the great free place. And they've just driven from Ottawa, and they're like, this is my first time to charge. I don't really need to charge before going home, but I thought I might as well because it's free. So with the newer ones and all the range you have, it's such a non-issue. Like, who driving gas doesn't stop to get gas between Ottawa and Toronto? I mean, you do, right? You stop.
Especially if you have kids in the car, you're stopping.
Yeah, exactly. Or for some reason. So it's like, it's no big deal. So, but I would say if you're spending less money and buying an older version like I did, 2014, and Cara said before we started that my vehicle was, it looks like her first vehicle. And the Leaf has a really good reputation based on the little booklet that Cara's group has. But this is an older one, so it doesn't have the, it is perfect if you're going under 100K. I can go to Hamilton back, Kitchener and back, no problem. So if you have another vehicle, like what the PowerPoint said, or if you have, if you're not going a range, spend little money and get something that you can just use locally. It's brilliant. And then look at other alternatives. But if you need more range, like I know in the winter, there was a question in the chat about winter. Your battery is not as efficient in the winter. So I needed to get from Guelph to Humber College one Saturday, snowstorm. I wanted to have some heat on. I knew I couldn't put heat on because it would pull from my battery, but I thought I'd have enough to get there, and I didn't, because the battery isn't as efficient in the winter, and I had to park it at that Toronto Airport Authority place, get a cab, go to the rest of the way to Humber, come back and get the car. So that was an example of I didn't know my car well enough to know that it would function differently in the winter, that I wouldn't have that full 140 battery. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, you need to buy based on sort of your lifestyle as well as the funds that are available. But really, I would never, ever, ever buy a hybrid. And I would never drive anything but EV again. A little contrary to what Cara said, or you said, like within the next year, there'll be a lot of options. But I'm really not interested in buying new things. I'm just not, I'm just not attached to new vehicles, but I do need a truck. And that's been the hard one, that there hasn't been a lot of options for purely EV trucks. So especially used, because they have to come out and then you have to wait 4 years or something till there's a good use. And so I've been kind of holding out till then, but yeah, so thanks so much. I hope something I've said is useful for some of you, but I remember feeling a little like, ooh, what am I getting into? And it was nothing. Within the first day, you feel like you're driving at the fairground when you put your pedal down, the bumper cars, because it's so quiet. One of the things I would say is, because it's so quiet, literally people don't hear you. That picture is in Exhibition Park in the parking lot. I will be driving behind people and they don't hear me at all. And I'm right up against them waiting for them to move. So that's something to be really mindful of. Backing up, you have the beep, which is fabulous. That's been installed because of the quietness, but you have to be really careful about how beautifully quiet it is, which is such a delight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beverly. I really love how you went right into it and you answered a lot of the questions that came out in the chat. So there were, there's one thing that I do want to ask you, which, we've touched a base on quite a number of barriers that people normally have when getting an EV, whether it's winter driving, range, whatever. I just want to ask, to everyone on the panel, are there any ones that you haven't touched, barriers that you overcame in order to, actually make that step to purchase your EV?
I think we've touched probably on almost all the barriers that I can think of. The only thing that I saw I was trying to scan through the questions is, there was some concerns about availability of public charging. So on that, I would say, there are some really great websites. One is called PlugShare and one is called Charge Hub, and it's an app and basically shows where all the chargers are. And I think you'll be surprised how many there are. Now, of course, we live in Southwestern Ontario, sort of urban, suburban. There's a lot. I will tell you, once you get more remote, it's less, there are going to be places. And so I do recommend, sort of like Beverly said, it's smart to just if you're going to go somewhere, you check the app the night before, and you can click on the specific charger and make sure that it's operating, you know, so that you're not going to be surprised when you get there. And so I would say it's pretty good. Do we need more public charging? Yes, there's still more work to do. And yes, Tesla has done a better job than the rest, but it is improving, and it shouldn't be a barrier to entry. I've been, as I said, I've had an EV since 2011, and back then there were like literally none. And fortunately, like, I'm one of those people that does most of my charging at home. But, you know, I've driven to Montreal with my EV. I've driven to New York City. I've driven to Windsor. I've driven to Detroit. I've driven pretty much all over. And, you know, I've only had 1 or 2 times where it's really been difficult. And that was quite a few years ago. So I would say now it's getting easier and easier, and you just have to be smart and plan ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, you know, part of what your talk was you had to kind of plan. And I'm going to say that I don't plan. Like, I plan as much as somebody who is going on a road trip. As you're driving and your gas tank's getting low, you open up your app and find like gas stations near me. That's what I do. I'll drive around wherever I'm going. If it's somewhere in Southwestern Ontario, until I think I need to charge, then I'll just look for a charger near me, and they'll be all over the place. And, you know, I've got a little section on my phone where there's maybe 3 different apps that kind of the most common chargers. And it's easy. Like, I've showed up at a charger where like I haven't used this company before, and you just kind of download their app and scan something. It's really easy. It's just like getting gas for people who use gas. I've only really had to plan when I know I'm going somewhere a little bit kind of further away. Like, I had to go to Aurelia. So before I left the night before, I wanted to see, like, is there charging in Aurelia? Just kind of do that double check. But, you know, driving around this neck of the woods, I don't do any planning, and I've never had trouble.
So one of the questions that came up was around the types of chargers. So to clarify, can any electric vehicle use a Tesla charging station?
No, Tesla is just for Tesla.
Okay.
Other cars cannot use it. Tesla can use the other chargers because there's an adapter for that. But for the most part, if you have a non-Tesla car, you're looking for the non-Tesla chargers.
Okay, that's good to know. I am
And
just
typically where you find a Tesla charge, there's other charge, you know, be it at the Eaton Center inside, or, you know, Greater Toronto Authority, or wherever. If there's usually a mix, right?
right. So I have a question for you, kind of from a more personal experience. So, you know, I live in an apartment building, multi-residential, you know, and a lot of, I guess, people, you know, my age or in similar situations where you don't have, you know, your own home and the ability to have your own charger. Can you speak to some options maybe you've seen that people have? I know that, you know, in our parking garage downstairs, some people actually have managed to have electric vehicle chargers installed, but I've heard that, you know, it's not something that they're doing anymore or whatever. So personally, I'd love to hear more about that, because, you know, it's something where I don't know if I'm ever going to get you know, a house that'll have a garage and, you know, a nicer way to charge.
Sure.
So
Well, multi-unit is a big challenge. Definitely, like in new multi-unit, they are more and more including charging in there. But in an existing condo or apartment building, often, of course, they didn't have it. And we are seeing retrofits, but a retrofit sometimes can be very expensive. So sometimes it's not going to happen. The one thing we do have in Ontario is a law that requires them, they can't just tell you no if you ask for it. They have to do an energy assessment and show you that they cannot do it. So it's sort of like they just can't say no out of hand. So that's one way you can do it. The other thing I recommend, if you're thinking about that, is if you do a survey of the people who live in the building, there's like strength in numbers, right? So when one person goes to the property manager or to the condo board or whatever, they're like, well, you're the only one. But if you do a survey, say how many people are thinking about getting EV, and you say, oh, there's like 30 people in here who are interested, then, you know, they'll take it more seriously and they'll actually do a bit of work around it. And finally, there is a guide on our website if it's helpful. Make your condo EV ready. And it's like all the steps and things that you can do to try to get chargers in your building.
I will definitely be visiting that section of your website. I think, you know, this discussion has been very interesting. Even, you know, myself and my partner, we went through the process of buying a car earlier this year, and, you know, we thought about EVs, we thought about plug-in hybrids, you know, eventually landed on, you know, a gas car, and looking at the gas prices now, regretting it. So hearing about, you know, the fact that there is a rebate available through Plug and Drive, I think is really helpful, because, you know, one of the things that we saw was that there weren't any or many available, especially in the price range that we were looking for to spend in cars. So I think that, you know, is something that is definitely helpful. You know, you mentioned something also, you talked about, you know, maintenance for your car, how maintenance for an electric vehicle is a lot lower. Are there any other things that maybe, you know, people should consider? Maybe something that, you know, I didn't know. You know, I know very little about cars, even though I was the one who made the decision about buying a car, and I didn't realize, you know, there wasn't all of these things that I would have to consider that we do, because, you know, I went ahead and I was like, I'm going to buy this maintenance plan so I don't have to pay for them for the next couple of years. So if there's anything else, you know, that people can look at and say, you know, here's other things that I just didn't have to do or consider, like oil changes or, you know.
I think, I forget which one of you talked about maintenance, but I also had a Nissan Leaf, the same little blue one that you're driving, Beverly. And I had it for 7 years. I sold it a couple of years ago. And in the first 6 years, I changed my wiper blades. $20. So I challenge you to find a gas car that can come in at $20 for 6 years of ownership. So there's just really nothing to fix. So if they try to sell you some kind of maintenance package, don't buy it, because there's literally nothing to pay for it. Like, and I also have a Bolt now. I sold my Leaf and I bought a Bolt in 2017. And I also have the battery repair. I'm very happy about it, because I've got like a new battery in a 5-year-old car. And other than that battery fix, which was covered by them, I've never had anything. So these cars just are not prone to needing any repairs.
Nothing. There's nothing to do. Windshield wipers and some snow tires.
Do you ever miss going to your mechanic?
Anyway, right? You would do that for a gas car as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I have to put that little winter perk in that you shared when you introduced me, though. Like, what other vehicle? Like, I think of all the years I drove great diesel vehicles, but, you know, you'd have to wait for your car to heat up in the winter, and you'd be cold, and 10 minutes after your engine warmed up. You know, driving electric, it's warm instantly, like within a minute of turning your vehicle on. So it's just a lovely, and how it's designed too in car. You could, please correct me if I'm wrong, but when I bumped into you folks, the Plug and Drive people at that conference, and I was saying, well, does it suck a lot of battery to have your seat heat on and your handle, your steering wheel heat? And they said essentially it doesn't suck any battery for that. So, you know, put your seat heat on, put your steering wheel on, and then if you have to turn the heat off to preserve some battery to get somewhere, for cars like mine that I just have a little bit of range, then you can do that.
Yeah, I also love the instant heat in the winter. The other thing is my car, I think a lot of cars, I've got a little app on my phone. And so if it's the winter and I'm going to be going outside, 5 minutes before I go, I just turn it on and it preheats for me. So if I'm at work and I'm leaving, I get into a toasty warm car, which is just so lovely. And I don't feel that bad about doing it. I never let my when I used to have a gas car, would never let it idle to warm up. That would just be bad with all the emissions coming out the back. But I'm kind of, guilt-free, just doing my, 5-minute warm up before I get in a toasty warm car. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really good to know. And oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, excuse me.
Yeah, so on that note of those types of things not taking up battery, there was another question I think someone answered in the chat, but in case people missed the response of that, a common question that I hear too is idling in your car when you're driving, say rush hour traffic, and if that has an impact on the range of your vehicle, like it would for a gas car, because when you're idling you're using gas. So can you speak to that? I know it was already answered, but I'm sure it would be good to just.
I guess the way to think about it is, in a gas car you have your gas tank that's either full or empty, and you can kind of look at the gas gauge, whereas in an EV you don't have like a tank. It sort of shows you, it'll give you how many kilometers you have. And so for instance, let's say I know I've got 100 kilometers of range and I'm going to be driving 50 kilometers somewhere. If I'm sitting in traffic for 5 hours waiting to get those 50 kilometers, my car's not burning any energy. It's just sitting there, not really using any of that 50 kilometer range. So you can sit in traffic forever and still have that same 100 kilometers of range. So you don't really burn any of that energy unless you're actually moving forward. So rush hour is not a problem. If you're stuck in traffic for hours and hours, it's the distance you travel that matters. Because one other thing we didn't talk about, and I think this is because it's a women's night that we're all talking about sensible things like costs and maintenance and stuff like that. And if this was a guy's night, we'll be talking about how much fun EVs are to drive. And they're actually, like, I'm not a car person, but they're really fun. It feels quite different from a gas car. Yeah, gas cars kind of slowly accelerate. With an EV, you put your foot on the accelerator and it just goes. Like if you're at the red light that turns green next to somebody, your pickup, it goes real fast. It's like super fast acceleration, and it's just really fun to drive.
Oh, I so agree, Mary. And the funny thing is, when I had my original Leaf, which is a little hatchback, and it's a cute little car, but it's not exactly a fancy car. I one time pulled up on the line next to a Bugatti, which is a very fancy car, which my son told me was like a super expensive car. And then we're at the line and I looked at the guy and I just flew off the line way faster than that guy. And I thought, oh my God, like a Leaf can beat a Bugatti. Yeah, they're really fun to drive. And it's actually great on the highway if you need to pass somebody.
And Mary, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because what I was wanting to say is, if you're buying new, you just buy what you like and buy the range. But if you're buying used, I strongly recommend you go and just try some different models. I remember first we tried the BMW and it drove so beautifully. And it has an auxiliary with it as well, which is a real bonus. But, it's lifestyle. You got to look at all those things. The back windows didn't open. So if you have kids in the back seat and they can't open the windows, that's kind of not fun. So it's that lifestyle. So, but just go and see how they feel. I know when we were looking used, there wasn't a lot in this area. We had to drive to Toronto and try a few, and there was lots of dealers that had used ones, and that was a great place to try 3 or 4 at one place. So just spend a little time on a Saturday afternoon and make an appointment and try some out.
And Cara, I think plug and drive, you can actually, there's a little track, right, where people can come and do a little zip around the track and try different cars. Is that correct?
We're just off Finch near Dufferin, and there's lots of little side streets, and we're very close to Downsview where there is a track. And so depending on how much time there is, sometimes we do that, but you can drive on the main roads and just, we have about, at any given time, anywhere from 10 to 20 different EVs on the lot. So you don't have to go from dealer to dealer. These are new cars, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, most of them are available used. But it just is a great way to figure out what car is the one for you.
I just see the next question that's just come up about getting stuck in the snow. And all I can speak to is my personal experience is that I have not gotten stuck in the snow in my car. The thing about EVs is the battery lives kind of underneath the bottom of the car between all four wheels, kind of low at the bottom. So EVs are sort of bottom heavy, which I think is good for cornering and traction, that kind of stuff.
I find the Bolt also quite good in snow, in the snow. And actually I drive quite a lot to the Hockley Valley area where there's more snow than in Toronto, and I've not had a problem. I think, you know, depends on the car. Again, I haven't heard this to be a significant problem, but I always do get snow tires. I do the swap, and I do find that helps.
Awesome. That's great. I know we've gone significantly over time, but I didn't want to interrupt this great discussion and these really, really great questions that have been coming up. But thank you so much. If there's any last kind of comments or anything that you'd like to, bring up, like, you love driving it, it feels so, cool to drive your car, whatever. I'd just love to get some, last remarks from everybody before we wrap up and announce the winner that Rasha has so nicely brought up so that everyone can see.
Yeah, I'll just say no regrets. I did a little research at the beginning, and it's everything I had hoped for and more. Yeah. We'll never, ever go back to gas in our family.
There, never. In fact, I traveled to another country and I had to rent a car, and it's the first time that I had driven a gas car in years. And I forgot how horrible and stinky it was because I just haven't done it in such a long time. You get used to that, right? You don't, and touching everything, especially during COVID, everything seemed so, gross. And I just felt so lucky to be driving an EV. So anyway, I hope that, it's been helpful, and I hope you will follow up. Plug and Drive is there to answer all your questions. There's no charge for anything. I hope that you'll just give us a call if there's anything we didn't answer tonight.
Cara, one question I had, is there information on Plug and Drive about driving EV, the benefits versus the environmental detriment of the lithium? Because I know I have been accosted a few times by people saying, you think you're doing a good thing, and really it was just trying to save some money, but saying that I'm doing more damage.
I wouldn't say we have it like as a cost benefit, but we do have a thing about the batteries, because we like a Q&A kind of about batteries and recycling, because we get that a lot. And what I typically say is like, look, I'm not a scientist, but there have been so many different, like you can point to the Association of Concerned Scientists and U of T profs and everything that did the full life cycle assessment. So they're looking not just at fuel to fuel, but they're looking cradle to grave, like the manufacturing, the batteries, everything. And every assessment ever done shows the EV like far and away less environmental impact than a gas car, even taking into account the battery and lithium. And all I can say is if you're going to drive a car, nothing is for nothing. Like there's impacts, right? It's like, well, then don't have a car at all, right? Like that's the best thing you can do. And no one's suggesting it's perfect. It's not, but it's much, much better than the alternative.
Absolutely. Progress is always better than perfection. Thank you for bringing that up. I know there were some questions around, the environmental impacts of batteries and battery recycling. So I think it would be good. And does Plug and Drive have that information on their website as well that we could point them to?
Yeah, we have some info about that batteries are being recycled. And actually there's some really amazing startups right in Toronto that are leading the way on recycling. And they're saying something like 80 to 90% of the lithium in our batteries is going to be reused. And that's after these batteries go into a secondary use. Like they go out of the car and they'll be used as backup storage or other things, and then they will go and be recycled. So yes, I mean, mining has impacts for sure. I'm not trying to suggest there's no impact, But, you know, we will have a source of lithium from those used batteries going forward.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much again. It was really interesting to hear all of your experiences and, you know, answers to questions that I've had for a while, answers to questions I didn't even know I had. So I hope everyone can take away, you know, some really valuable information that you've shared today. So thank you. And on that note, I'd also like to reiterate that Cara and her team will be hosting EV 101 seminars. And that's kind of one of those seminars that you have to take to get the rebates that Cara mentioned earlier. And we will be sending out a link after this webinar with links to those webinars, as well as the rebates. And, you know, this has also been recorded and we will send that out as well. So I just want to thank you, you know, all of our speakers tonight. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for, you know, giving me the opportunity to moderate this. It's been a really great experience. And I think you've really helped, you know, break some ice for all of us that have been curious about EVs, but, you know, maybe it's not something that we thought we could do, and now it is. I'm hoping so. I know I definitely think so. And, you know, just before I close this off for tonight, when everybody registered for this webinar, we also had a giveaway for a heated hot water tank blanket. So I just want to announce that the winner of that blanket is Anita Payne. So congratulations, Anita. Your hot water is going to stay even warmer and warmer for longer. And we'll be reaching out to you by email to get you all of the, you know, information about that. So thank you again, everybody, for coming to today's event. And, you know, we've also mentioned a few of the other events that will be happening hosted by Emerge. Feel free to look on, you know, Emerge's website or social media, and we hope to see you there. Thank you so much, and good night from all of us, and stay safe.